This is the Chasing Tomorrow podcast with Joe Gagnon. We bring you captivating conversations that will inspire all of us to go after our own version of a high-performance life. Welcome to Chasing Tomorrow podcast. It is your two favorite people, Joe and Sean. We always have fun together, and we have fun apart. What Sean gets to do, we get to hear about. I'm working on some projects myself here. There's some intersection always, and just some fun learnings from living in our parallel universes, living today, chasing tomorrow, having fun, smiling all the way. Sean, how are you today?
I'm good. I hope I kind of want to get right into it. What you were just talking about before was a great description about us living parallel, separate but separate. And Joe, I was thinking about your thought about people like always reflecting on maybe like where they used to be and almost looking at like the negatives of it. Do you want to share your thought and then I'll come back?
Yeah, of course, both of us hang out with some pretty rad performance men and women, right? Like they just knock it out of the park. And then there are times where all of us have been at our peak performance. And then I've also been, because partially myself too, as I get older, and then I find that we're all, as we go along, making excuses as to why we're slower, can't lift as much weight, aren't as fast, can't climb as well. And it feels to me that we're sort of missing the point, that the idea of a peak performance moment doesn't define who we are, but then we want to measure against that all the time. And we somewhat feel sheepish and embarrassed that we're still active by making excuses for, oh, well, I'm going slower. Like, I think you're going is all that matters. We have the pleasure of living a long life, then it should be that it's not some finite number that defines success, but being active and alive, vibrant, and full of vitality. So, anyway, I think we all have to do a little bit of reframing, and maybe between us, we can figure out how to do that.
Yeah. Joe, reframing is what I want to hit on. And it's funny because we haven't even talked about this, but when I said I kind of have this way I want to, respond to what you were sharing, it's about reframing. And ultimately, it's about where we're looking, right? And what we're comparing to. When I think about people doing that, I think they're just looking the wrong direction, right? Here's a really, really funny example. I have a networking call. I have a group of people that we get together once a month and try to help each other solve the problems of the world. And one of the guys having a second kidney talked about how excited he was briefly, and then and in length, I'll elaborate on now he's not going to be able to do the things he likes, like go out to eat, work out. And that is clearly where his attention, time, and energy was focused.
Yeah.
And I said, then, and he's like, what are your thoughts on that? And I spoke up. I said, then don't do it. Don't spend time with your kid. Go exercise and go out to eat. He goes, I have to be there for my family and for my kid. I was like, awesome. Then be there. Like you can't be in two places at once. Like you're choosing. And also, it's funny because of all people, this guy has a 7-figure salary, runs a huge company, has a good work-life balance. His focus is just in the wrong direction. And Joe, we had this family retreat this weekend. And at one point, I was taking a walk with my mom, and she goes, Sean, I'm very happy to be here, but this is hard for me. And I was like, you know what, mom? It's hard for me too. Like, she's like, you're pushing me on workouts. And I was like, yeah, well, instead of me getting to work out, we were taking 1 mile walks and I was kind of coaching them through it. And that was my workout. I'm like, I'm used to, like, last weekend I ran 50 miles across the Grand Canyon. Like, that's what I want to be doing. Like, we're meeting in the middle. And what I thought about was we're meeting in the middle because we're making a sacrifice for something better. I'm trading a 50-mile run through the Grand Canyon, which is awesome, for quality time with my mom, which is even better. And if you're not excited about the sacrifice that you're making, it's awesome. Don't make it. Don't make it. And that's what I think it is, right? It's everything in life's a choice. If people aren't performing exactly where they are, it's they're upset about it. They're just looking at the wrong thing.
I think if you look at life through the lens of scarcity and insecurity, then what you end up doing is you become selfish and you become frustrated by the lack of progress. Because In a world of abundance, you don't need to try to have more all the time. You can take time to think about, well, like your buddy there. He doesn't probably need more money, but he can really benefit the planet by spending more time with his kids, making them more independent, more autonomous, more well adjusted with a value system. Like that's a better investment than more money if he worked more. And that moment of peak performance, if that's at the expense because you're doing it because you're insecure at the expense of everything else you could do, then it doesn't mean we shouldn't shoot for it, but it can't be the end of the game, right? That is then we define sort of a loss, right? It's the I'll never have that again. But what if, to your point, what if you could have something else? Wouldn't that be just as good? Why did we define only one dynamic that is really great rather than all of life being really great?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like exactly. Looking at the whole picture, right? It's like, okay, yes, I'm not exercising as much, but now I have a kid and I get to spend time with them and commit to my wife that like it's like all of these other things. And I'll tell you, it almost feels like privileged. It is privileged, but it almost feels like a joke to mention some of the choices we have when we reflect on it. It's like spend time with my kids or work out. They're both great, Dan. Shut up. Like, but me and Emma talk about this too, because with our lifestyle, every 30 days, Joe, we're faced with the same question. Where do we live? And every 30 days, it's the same question, Joe. Do we go to France? Do we go to Peru? Do we just go back home and see family? And what we've decided is so here's actually a greater vantage point. From the introduction of multicellular organisms, however long ago that was, until the Industrial Revolution, we lived in scarcity, less choices, less information, less access to resources, food, whatever. Now we need to make a shift of consciousness towards living in abundance and focusing on our skill to discern. That's really where I think we need to be living. So back to me and Emma's example, if our focus is on where we're not living, we will go crazy. Because she said, let's go to Mexico. I'm like, yeah, Mexico sounds great. You know, is that real? Is that what we want to end up doing? Like, here are the drawbacks, here are the positives. You just need to play with all of your decisions and ultimately commit to your decisions. I have a friend who started a business recently. His business is going well, and he goes, I'm doing these side projects. I don't really care about them. They're fun, and I'm keeping up with them. I'm like, let that go, and you need to focus on your business. Like, whatever you're gonna do it 100%. And that's what like Emma says too. It's like when we move to a place, if we're gonna live this summer in Denver, Colorado. It's more of a city than we usually do. If we chose that already, we committed, we paid for the house. Do not sit there and complain to each other about how we're in a city. Take advantage of the increased social life that we have. If we're going to complain about it, go live in Leadville for the summer.
Yeah, I think that this idea of whether or not you're going to appreciate your time here or not, whatever the constraint, there's a question people always ask, which is, what's the worst career or life advice you ever got? And I always think that that's a tough question because it's somewhat pejorative. But if I was to be forced to answer, it would always be this, which is someone says you should find your passion and do what you love. And I say, well, why don't you just love what you do? Like, whatever it is. Like, why create this binary opportunity rather than the collective totality of life? Like, if you had to be working at McDonald's for a while because that's what you had to do, just fall in love with that. If you had to live in the city for a while, fall in love with that. If you're out in, why not embrace it all with the same level of sort of excitement and intensity and opportunity? Because the end is never known, and we never have one less day than we want, and we always want to this life of sort of like, wow, it goes by fast, so why not do what you're doing, which is every place you go, appreciate where you are, make the best of it. And maybe some are different than the others, but I don't know if they're better, so how you want to show up. So I think that this framing stuff is not to be made up as like an excuse, but as a strategy. And I think that that's a big difference.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's funny. I've been trying to think about how to just simplify everything in my life, just like because in the moment things get complex, right? It's like, oh, like okay, that sounds good, Sean and Joe. How do I keep up with that when the rubber meets the road? And what kind of has come to me is just like Okay, simplifying, right? And if we're gonna simplify it, the best way to do it in my mind is like just pick one thing to anchor to. Pick your biggest fear. Write your fear out. Homeless, lonely, whatever. And always compare yourself to that. It's like not compare yourself, sorry. Compare your current environment and your current settings to that, right? Like wow, I don't really want to be in a city. Okay, well, you're not living in your parents' basement, and that's been your biggest fear. Like, just comparing it to that, you'll find immense gratitude. Joe, I got to tell you, I'm sure this is something you feel. I know you told me you're like, when you think age, I agree. Age is just a number. It's funny. But I was thinking the other day, I'm like, I'm 30, man. Like I just got together with my high school buddies, right? Like that really like I see it frequently, but like really like living with, seeing like I haven't seen 10 years, since 12 years since high school. And it just I felt this sense of urgency towards life of just no matter what I'm doing, I'm pouring my heart into it. I'm bringing every ounce of energy that I have because it's fleeting. And I actually don't think life fleeting is a negative. That's a big philosophical, spiritual discussion. But it just got me thinking, just like, man, if there's anything you want to do, do it. And Joe, the way you live life inspires me to this. But if there's anything you want to do it. If there's anything that you're scared to do, try it. Like there's no time to waste. And I think that's what comes to it too. Everyone always thinks, I'm gonna have another chance. Like that'll come around. It's like you need to be opportunistic. Jesse Itzler has this really funny story. I heard him say once. He went to go climb Mount Washington. It's up in the Northeast, scary mountain, surprisingly hard to climb, can be really bad weather. He failed the weather, they had to turn back. He got home and his wife goes, honey, you got this. You spend all year with a trainer, you learn about the mountain, watch the weather, plan in case you have to go up and come back, and you're going to climb it next year. He goes, he said this was on a Wednesday. He goes, next year, I'm going back on Friday. He was like, he's like, there's no time to waste. Like, who knows? Like, he wants to climb this thing. He's climbing it on Friday, and whether there's hyperbole there or not, that message still sits with me today.
Yeah, look, we're all practicing as we go along. So the favorite, right, the courage to make commitment to consistency is how we develop whatever it is that we want to be good at. If we spend more time doing it, we get better at it. It is the one of the best parts of the human system is that focus brings attention and attention brings results. And if that's what you want to do, then just go do that. I've been back on the bike again. I had been really focused on running, and then I took up this challenge. And in what about a week or 10 days, I'm going to be doing this 200-mile gravel ride through Kansas. It's certainly not going to be easy. And I can sort of remember getting back on the bike in the first 10 miles. I was like, oh man, this is going to, I don't know. And then this past weekend, I got in a 90-mile ride by myself and I finished it and was sort of smiling a little bit like, oh wow, putting the time in, getting out there by myself, just pedaling. I know how to ride a bike. It starts to come back together again. And when it was just that reassurance over and over again that if you put in the time and the effort, now I still have a bit more to go to get to 200, but that built a lot of confidence. But the start point was not. And so you just have to sort of just stick with it. And whether you go back on a Friday or you just do it 5 days a week or whatever the plan, just be clear about what you're trying to achieve. And I think we talked about this, but I love this reframing of the word failure means growth. It's easy to think in your world, Sean, of weightlifting, right? To failure. I can't lift anymore. Well, that means the muscle fatigued at a level that it couldn't do anymore. But if you keep doing it, that failure goes away. It becomes growth, right? Because the muscles are like, oh,
Yeah.
I need to build some more muscle fibers. Let me go do that. But we create these words because they're I don't know, the limitation of how we think. And if we can get beyond those words into some of the action, the intention, and that consistency, we're pretty excited about really what comes at the end of that.
Yeah. What keeps you what keeps you motivated? Like you kind of started pet biking from the ground up again. I mean, you hadn't been on a bike in a while. Your cardiovascular muscular shape's great. But what really kept you like motivated? Like or did you hit a low point or
Yeah.
are you pretty calloused in the mind right now?
Oh no, I hit some really ridiculous points like, oh my God, riding into the wind and just feeling like I'm putting so much effort and going so darn slow. It is a sad moment. But I don't know, the motivation comes from that every time I sort of make some intention or some commitment, I want to put the best effort in so that ending the process, I will feel good about my effort because it's unpredictable sometimes what happens. You could get a flight, you could fall, weather could be horrible. I don't know. But if you feel good about the effort that you put in leading up to it, then you always feel good about yourself. And I don't know. I just keep coming back to that. I like this word earned. I feel like I earned my opportunity at this point in my life. I earned it because I put in the effort, and I earned it because I found myself to hang out with smart people and who are really good at stuff and learn from them. I earned it because I paid attention and practiced and improved and just kept over and over again. And I think we feel best, and we usually just think about earning money, but we earn a lot of the rest of what happens in our life. And that to me is when, if we go up Maslow's hierarchy, when you get to that self actualization, if you can, I think that equates to two things. You earned it and you love yourself, and you now have come to grips with sort of, wow, I deserve to be here, pretty good at this. I'm the one who's in charge, and I actually feel good about that. And I think that's just takes repetitive revisit to the same activity, and it really works. So yeah, I don't know, reassuring and reaffirming.
It is. It is. There is something about earning it like almost on a kind of spiritual level too. My favorite author, T. Harv Eker, second favorite author. He made a comment. He's like, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And if you tell yourself, I'm gonna go to the gym today, and then you go to the gym, you're now telling the world, oh, I do what I say I'm gonna do. And you're telling your subconscious. Because right now, Joe, if someone's out there that doesn't believe in themselves says, hey, I'm going to start a business and and sell it for $500 million. They might not believe in what they say. But if every time you say, I'm going to go to the grocery store, you do. I'm going to go to the gym, I do. I'm going to send this email, I do. I'm going to do another 20 push ups, I do. I'm going to start a podcast, I do. You start to like build that where your body can't help but believe it. I believe in the law of manifestation. It's like the world can't help to believe it. And it just comes to a place where it's that is what's going to happen. And I think it's really sticking with it. Like you said, the consistency.
Yeah, look, we make this joke I like to, which is you already got your lottery ticket and it's a winner. Just cash it. Like, just do that, man. Stop looking for another lottery ticket, a different kind of winner. You are it. You are the resource.
I love that.
So just cash it every day, and it actually gives you a massive return. And that's the and that is truly the most satisfying. When it's someone else's and they give it to you, actually that's not very satisfying. It sometimes might feel that way, but really at the end of the day, I think we all know that it isn't. But of course, look, we have to meet our basic needs. That's the Maslow hierarchy. If you don't have basic needs met, that is problematic. But once you meet basic needs, then you just work your way up the hierarchy, and this is where it all comes together. I'm looking forward to a lot of what we're going to get doing here, Sean. Just one other thing I wanted to touch on before we end up, because you are so doing such interesting stuff. Most people go on family vacations, but you said you went on a family retreat, which I was chuckling. I'm like, how did you talk people into that? Did you tell them it was a vacation and they showed up as a retreat? But you use that language very specifically. How would you define sort of what you had set out as the intention for the group getting together in that way?
Yeah, I defined it. I think I might have to tell a little backstory to understand it. But so my family, my immediate family, is my brother, 2 years older than me. He's also my best friend. My mom, who lives up in outside of Baltimore. My dad, who lives outside DC, and we have an awesome family, a great dynamic. My parents been split up since I was a pretty little kid, like 3 or something. I don't know. For my birthday 2 years ago, I said I would like to do a family retreat. And on the side, they all asked me like, "Hey, like, I'd love to get you something for your birthday. Like, are you climbing mountains? Like, what's something for that?" I was like, "No, I'd like to do a family retreat, and I'd like to pay for it because there can be high expenses in that. But I want you guys to show up and bring the energy of openness and commitment and intentionality and focus to this retreat." So my birthday came around. This was 2 years ago, and they said, "We're getting you a family retreat. We don't really know what it is. You're going to tell us, but we're in." And I was overjoyed. So this was our second one.
Okay.
There's two rules: no technology and no drugs or alcohol. those rules are specific because just imagine you're in a home. We choose fairly remote places with no technology and no drugs or alcohol. The output of that is almost guaranteed to be pretty present, right? That's all presence, right? How long can you and then other things come up, emotions, vulnerability, thought provoking questions. These things are natural outputs of the environment. So, especially with the people that are in my family, I didn't want to scare them with, hey, we're going to be present for 4 days, focused, we're going to be vulnerable. That's scary. I said, show up and hear the rules. And I knew the output would be that output. So what it was we had a cabin in northern Maryland. It was pretty out there. It was still 15 minutes from a town, but like it was really in the woods and felt very much out there. Cars are technology, so we had to do all the grocery shopping before. No phones, no TVs, no use of the internet. I had a lot of activities planned. We brought the pop-up sauna that we love. We I had some cooking, some singing, some journaling, some meditation. We got to a lot of it, not all of it, but at the end of the day, it was hanging out because hang out for 16 hours in a house where you can't drive anywhere, and it was like a country road on a hill. You couldn't really walk anywhere with the same people following those rules I outlined. Good things happen. Like vulnerable openness happens. Like people really thinking creativity happens. We were writing music. My family has a lot of musicians. We were diving in and kind of going back to what we talked about at the beginning. Sacrifice is what happened, right? Like on my family retreat, right? Like everyone realized there's this greater good here that we're all sacrificing towards, and no one was focusing on the sacrifice. They were focusing on the greater good. And that's why I actually wanted to shape it around my birthday present, because I wanted people to feel guilty if they didn't live up to what they could. I wanted them, like, all of them were like, Sean, this isn't a sacrifice. Like, this is like your birthday present. I'm like, it's still a sacrifice. It's one you're happy to make, as they all should be. But so it was very interesting, unbelievably fulfilling. I couldn't recommend it anymore. It's crazy how we would do stuff like this. Hey, we're gonna journal for 15 minutes. No prompt. And then we'd share that. We'd end up crying and hugging after that. It was amazing. I will say it definitely took some like emotional and mental preparation from me to bring a little level of like serious isn't the right word, but like focus to it. But it was really really great. And whether it's a family retreat, a friends retreat, or a retreat afternoon, as me and Emma call it, I challenge people out there. I challenge myself. I challenge you, Joe. I challenge people out there to just think a little differently. Like when me and Emma hang out after work one day, hey Emma, for the example, let's journal for 15 minutes about anything and then share it with each other. Share each other like what our thoughts are. Here's a prompt. In 2030, everything in my life worked out and this is what it looks like, right? I say that to myself sometimes and then read it and then I'm like, wow, like way to dream big. Like, but it's like, oh, I didn't know you wanted that. Oh, like you're scared of that? No, don't worry. Like it's like all of these things come out and yeah, it's fun. It all comes down to gratitude. Treat an afternoon like a retreat. Treat an hour like a retreat, and just challenge it. Like don't be shy to try something new and get others involved.
You're such a progressive guy and a leader and an inspiration to so many people. What you do, but the way you show up is nothing short of extraordinary. And only sort of said
Thank
it shouldn't be, right? But it is because the baseline isn't what we need it to be in this world. We need more examples of this. What is sort of fascinating by it, I am not, and you're not a therapist, but what you're doing with this is you're putting in place the foundation that makes for the most well adjusted people in this world. The people who feel supported, loved, wanted, needed. And I think that that is all we want. And when we have that, we are productive, fantastic members of society. And you keep reinforcing that. You keep rebuilding those pillars of strength that make you the guy that can take on the things you do because you have a foundation. And if you didn't, we need to put the foundation in because otherwise it gets hard. I didn't start with much of that, but I was at the foundation of family And I was confident my entire life because of that. And then I working to build that myself again, and give that sort of
Yeah.
independence, autonomy, sense of belonging to everyone else. And then you and I try to do that outside of our families and the community we hang out with. And we should all make that our intention, right? To provide that support, that love, that care, that be there for people mentality. Wow, we get a better world when we do that. And yeah, man, I'm really proud of you and your family for doing that and sharing it. And just nothing short of remarkable. So
Joe, and just hearing your story about like growing up, like I'm so proud of that too. But I appreciate you sharing what you did because when you said like I had a foundation of family, maybe you don't have foundation of family, but look at what you do have as we talked about this whole podcast here, and have that be your rock. Because what I felt leaving that weekend was right, like with very little money and materialism, I felt whole and complete, right? And I felt fucking invincible, Joe. I was like, look, I don't care what happens at my company. I got rocks.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like I got rocks back here. And it's like or like and that's the fun thing about hard things. Like if you're on mile 90 and you can finish, you're like I could take a blow. Like I could take a little hiccup, a bump in the road. And we don't need to talk about our passion for putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations because that's what most episodes are. But oh man, Joe, I loved it. This is awesome.
Amazing. Just keep being you, Sean. We're going to keep working this intergenerational dialogue, keep inspiring each other, and hopefully the rest of the people who come on the journey with us. Everyone, chase tomorrow by building a foundation. Bring both together as you go forward. And it really gets pretty darn good, is what Sean and I know. So thanks, Sean. Talk soon, man.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe.